You might notice that this candle is significantly shorter than usual, and that's because I'm going to be live streaming until the candle extinguishes, and we are going to be answering shadow work psychology questions on all possible angles. You can check the timestamps down below. If you're watching the replay, you don't need to do the first few minutes fluff, timestamps down below. But this is a special shutdown edition shadow work live stream because this candle is the symbolic representation of the final 9 days to go before I permanently close the doors to the Shadowwork Library. If you're one of the core fans, if you've known me for several years and you still haven't gotten involved in the Shadowwork Library, you haven't got Module 1 of the Shadowwork Library inside of your mind, you haven't connected with me and 130 other students, you've got 9 days to make the choice, and then I will be closing it forever because I am shutting the doors for the Shadowwork Library to create the perfect conditions for pressurized growth and inner work. There's 111 days left of the year. Just think about that. 111 days. What can you get done in 111 days? What can you confront inside yourself in 111 days? What could you learn about God? Learn about your mother? Learn about your father? Learn about your brother and your sister? Or maybe all 5 of those beings and entities and spiritual or sibling-based creatures combined. We've even got a nice little bit of dust. A little orb is joining us today. Whether that's an orb or a literal being, I do not know. We've got beings here today. Nonetheless, we've got 9 days left until the Shadowwork Library closes forever. I have offered a special discount price to give you the equivalent of 12 books for free rather than the normal $9.50. You get 2 stacks of this for free. We're going to be talking about this. But 13 people are joining. If you're joining live on a live stream, please say hello where you're joining in from. We are on a Shadowwork stream. I've just done a bit of a ramble and a bit of an invitational sales pitch to those who don't know that we've only got 9 days left on the Shadowwork Library until I permanently close the doors, create a fully pressurized container. Let's answer some Shadowwork questions as a final hurrah before this candle extinguishes, and I likewise extinguish the stream itself. I don't know how long this will last. I suppose we'll take estimates in the chat. How long do you think this candle will last? I reckon, well, until it goes not visible, so it'll still burn for longer, until it's kind of in the bottom, I say about 42 minutes. You think 4 hours, Johnny? Johnny, you must not be around candles very often. I don't mean no disrespect, but this is not 4 hours worth of candle. I see Nilesh in the chat saying, hey man, hello Nilesh, good to see you. What are the guesses on the candle length? I think 42 minutes. Tabs Ren says, hey, can you explain the details about the offer? Are you asking about the Shadowwork Library? You want to know what I do in the Shadowwork Library? Sure. Happy to do it. The Shadowwork Library is my private course and curriculum. I've been running the Shadowwork Library with a live community with weekly seminars in EU and USA time zones every single week for the last 8 months, and we are in the final 4 months of the year until it closes permanently and forever. This is only for this year. I have a 36-book curriculum spread across 9 modules. Most students need about a month to work through a module. For example, I have got Module 1 of the Shadowwork Library right here. I'll be teaching that in a YouTube video in kind of a fun, summarized way in either tomorrow or the day after. But this is one of the modules. So one of the modules is 6 books. There's 9 modules. There's 36 books. I've taken the best of, at that time, about 500 psychology books that I read, put them into a 36-book curriculum that focuses on trauma, inner child work, all of the Jungian ideas around the shadow, the anima, the animus, masculine archetypes, feminine archetypes, the transpersonal, the otherworldly. You have things like integral theory and Alice Bailey's theosophy in there. You also have bioenergetics, so the whole module on bioenergetics and somatic therapy. It's called the Shadowwork Library, but realistically, it's an integrative holistic psychology course and curriculum. So when you join the Shadowwork Library, you get access to all of the reading material in terms of here's the book list, here's a pre-programmed curriculum with exercises to work through, and you'll also get access to, most importantly, the weekly 90-minute seminars, which are active group coaching and where the magic really happens. I'm closing the doors permanently in 9 days' time because we are in the final third of the year. And I really want to create the greatest intimacy and connection in the group. I want to create like a cohesion. Imagine you're in a ceremony, right? You go to a ceremony, or you go to a sacred place, or even a common ritual. You're going to a wedding, you're going to a birthday party. Any ritual space needs containment. And for me, as the facilitator and teacher of the Shadowwork Library, I facilitate and contain the boundaries of the group. And as we're ending the year people are going to start doing something which I predict and I know it will happen. They will realize there's only 111 days left of the year, and they're going to say, oh fuck, I joined the Shadow Work Library to talk about that really one particular trauma I have. I joined the Shadow Work Library to be honest about the fact that I've got a porn addiction, or I've got a drug addiction, or I've got an issue with alcohol, or I've been cheating on my wife, cheating on my husband. I joined the Shadow Work Library because I just realised I was abused as a child and I'd never spoken about this before, and I wanted a community of intelligent and trustworthy individuals to talk about this. And I've been sitting in the seminars for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and I still haven't shared the thing I wanted to share. September, October, November, December, the final few days of this year, I guarantee, for good reason, people are going to feel that like time crunch, and we're going to get the best possible seminars of the year. So it's a really cool time. What I want to do with this 9-day flash sale, like 9 days and then the doors closed forever. You can never get in the Shadow Work Library. This is the cheapest and most accessible it'll ever be to work with me. Next year, if you want to join the self-integration school, that will be £3,300 joining fee plus the first 3 months of coaching. This is £800. And it's 3 months of active coaching and a 36-book curriculum. 9 modules, takes you about a month per module, and probably the best state of the community. 130 members. It's gone incredibly this year. And basically what I'm doing now is like for the dozen or so people, maybe you, who have been on the fence for months over the summer, and you're like, I might try and find a different master's degree, and you haven't found a master's degree, or I might try some other coaching, and you've done some other coaching, but it wasn't quite academic enough, or it wasn't quite intense enough. I have that intensity about me of wanting to really push you further. It's not just academia, it's life coaching and genuine, well, let's make an accountability, time to quit the drugs. Time to quit the porn. We talk about porn a lot in the Shadow Work Library. A lot of the men are struggling with it, and I've seen people, even one of the members recently put a successful post up in the community feed of 1 year of semen retention, which is a big win. Other people are celebrating multiple months of sobriety. Other people are getting into conscious relationships. People are just working through a book per week kind of pace. There's consistent wins in the group, and it's so rewarding for me to see 8 months into the Shadow Work Library what the collective consciousness is of these small group seminars, about 15 to 20 people. If you have been on the fence this year, I've tried to make it as accessible and invitational as possible by giving you the equivalent of 12 books for free, by giving you a timeline of 111 days until the new year, and saying, look, you can join at the absolute best it will ever be, when people are going to share the most intimate, intense, like taboo discussions possible. That's what we're all about. It's really the best. I'm closing it because it's going so well. That's basically what I'm doing. We've got 9 days until I close the doors forever. Then you can't get in, and I'm doing it because it's really good right now, and I want to protect the sanctity of the space and not have new members joining in November or December, because although it is fantastic that if you haven't read a book like Meeting the Shadow, this is probably the first book that you'll read in the Shadow Work Library, and then you might read a book like Owning Your Own Shadow, and then you might read a book like Jung's Map of the Soul, and then you might read a book like Projection and Recollection by Marie Louise and Franz, and then you might read a book like Romancing the Shadow by Connie Zweig and Stephen Abrams, and then you might read a book like Dreamwork if you can find a second-hand copy under $100. This one has been quite difficult for many students to find because the students have been buying out the copies from the global supply of this, I think, 1980s book on humanistic psychology. These are your first 6 books. You will love this experience. If you haven't found the master's degree, if you finish some kind of coaching or teaching and you're looking for like an autumnal, winter, academic, therapeutic, spiritual community and direct contact with me, now is the best time to work with me. I'll leave it there. I saw in the chat that Tabs, you said something. Hopefully that explains everything for you. I gave a full explanation and obviously a bit of a sales pitch because I am running a sales cycle to encourage people to join. You said thanks. So it's from now until the end of the year with weekly group calls. Yes, there are 90-minute seminars every single Sunday, and you get to choose whether you're in the USA time zone, which is 7 o'clock New York time, or the EU time zone, which is 7 o'clock London time. So tomorrow I will be hosting 2 calls, 7 at London, 7 at New York, which is midnight for UK time, but I like the late night streams. Weekly calls, it's until December 28th, and then you will retain and maintain access to the curriculum, however. So although the active coaching will end after 111 days, because we've had the whole year for people to get involved, and then I'm moving on to the self-integration school next year. I brought the price down, given the equivalent of a few free books, create this intense pressure at the best possible kind of community element, because you can then take that energy and then read the books in your own time. Continuing into 2026, you get lifetime access to the pre-recorded material. You won't lose that. It's just that the seminars will end. But still, a lot can be done. A hell of a lot can be done in 3.5 months. My mentorships are 4 months. I see time and time again just how far someone can go into their own personal trauma or even the golden shadow aspirations in just a 4-month period. I mean, everyone who's joining the live stream right now, let's forget the Shadow Work Library for a moment. What can you do with 111 days? This candle is burning bright, but it is burning out. We haven't got 111 days of this flame, but you have 111 days of consciousness until the new year. Many people forget their New Year's resolutions. I didn't, because I'm weird. I had only one New Year's resolution this year, to do what needs to be done for the greatest good or the highest need of myself and those I care about. To do what needs to be done for the greatest good, the highest need of myself and those I care about. And that is what I've done for the whole year. I'm not planning my 2026 resolution just yet, but for me, the intentionality of how we live month on month and keeping things simple and setting strong, singular intentions is something that I live by. Me creating an atmosphere of pressure around the Shadow Work Library is a nice excuse for someone who's been on the fence over the summer. Maybe you've had vacations, maybe you've been traveling, maybe you've been crushing it at business. This is a time where it's like, I'm going to sprint my way through the material. I'm going to properly sit down and read a book per week for 3 months straight. Imagine that. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is you can have a transformative period. In the next 3 months, you could take 12 books. Simple idea, right? Simple idea. Why have I discounted the price by £150? Why am I giving you the equivalent 12 books for free? Because I want you to read 1 book per week for 12 weeks in a row. So by the end of the year, you've got a massive sense of momentum. So you can start 2026 already in a momentum building state. If you're doing really well, you'll do even better. If 2025 has been a bit of a train wreck, a breakup, a business failure, maybe you've had a health complaint, maybe you've learned something horrific about your mother or father, you can join me and voice note me and message me and the other students and read the books and piece things back together before 2026 starts. People don't, unfortunately, I'm not being hard on people here. This is the time of year where people kind of check out, right? You might have noticed this. You may have noticed it in yourself. You may have noticed it in your friends. People check out as it gets colder. It's getting autumnal. They stop pushing. They stop either pushing towards business goals or fitness goals or relational goals or pushing deeper into their trauma. They kind of go into stagnation mode. It requires a push. Push isn't unhealthy. Push is just a gesture of energy. You can pull, you can push, you can expand, you can shrink. To push is to claim, to go into something, to go into your own life. So many people have this is a collective rant here on the collective shadow. There's a collective shadow boost around January up until mid-Feb, and then it goes down again. And then it comes up around April, and April into May, it kind of goes like this, and then it dips a little bit again. And then August, it kind of comes up and it peaks in the summer, and then it goes down. And then by October, November, December, it goes down and down and down. People get some moods here and there with things like Halloween or Black Friday or Christmas, depending on where you are in the world. But mostly, the collective energy of how people stay motivated or lose their motivation, it's mostly downs rather than ups. How many months of the year, collectively speaking, is the mainstream populace on a high and feeling motivated? January, reasonably so, New Year's resolution. Peak of the summer, let's call it August. Maybe April because it's springtime, because flowers are coming out, the bunnies are hopping around, the children are singing and skipping, and Jesus is rising. 3 months of the year. What happens to the other 9 months in the calendar? Most people don't do much, and that's just the truth of it. Most people have bursts of forwards momentum, which is why, quite sadly for me as a coach now going on 6 years, it's very difficult for people to maintain momentum for more than about 5 weeks on something. They can really push for like a 1 month challenge, but then to go beyond the month to 5 weeks and then to 6 weeks and then to 7 weeks, very, very difficult for most people to do alone. What I try and do in private mentorships, and especially in the Shadow Work Library, especially for the next 3.5 months until the end of the year, is keep your momentum ramp going beyond your normal capacity. If you normally dip off at week 5, week 6, have an accountability structure to take you further. It's the power of a group, it's the power of working with someone who's professionally coaching you. That's what I'm trying to offer. But just think of the collective energies and decide for yourself, do you want to be kind of riding the wave of the mainstream collective consciousness into like this apathetic September, October, November lull until the consumerism starts at Christmas and then January comes up and then you can set your fitness goals and your business goals, or just claim that energy immediately. Light your own fire. Read the books. Push yourself into deeper self-knowledge and deeper introspection. Start meditating every day if you're not meditating. Start reading for an hour every day. There's so much that can be done in the next 111 days. I'm pushing the Shadow Work Library. I'm opening the doors as wide as they can get before closing them again, just to create that catalytic effect. Like the alchemical vessel that needs to be properly contained so it can heat up to full strength it needs to get to. That's what we're after here. Tabs asks one more question. Says, one more question, what is your take on using this container towards business or work goals, i.e. Golden Shadow, using your soul's motives through your library? Tabs, the majority of students inside the Shadow Work Library bring up conversations every single week about their Golden Shadow potential. The Shadow Work Library isn't just a place for trauma healing. I'm not interested in pure trauma healing. Both the Shadow Work Library and what I'm doing on YouTube, what I'm doing in my whole life, this whole thing, the 700 psychology books, there's not necessarily a 50-50 split of 50% of my reading is on trauma and the bad things and 50% of my reading is on the light side of life and the golden shadow, self-actualization, Abraham Maslow, individuation kind of themes, but it roughly does fall in that category. Too much trauma work makes you locked in kind of like a neurotic self-victimization. Excuse me. I'll say that again. If you do too much trauma work, you get so locked in on the fact that I've been wounded, I've been bruised, I've been traumatized. Something happened, many things happened. The breakup, the parents, the addiction. If you don't balance it out with self-actualization work in terms of your dream career, your dream relationship, your dream body, your dream health, your dream spirituality, all of these other classical dreams, you get blinded in. And arguably you don't actually get the healing benefit of doing trauma work because you stay in a state of consciousness, of heaviness and past-based reflection. The majority of trauma work, somatic therapy is a bit different because you're working with things in the real time, but if you're thinking back to the memories from the past, you are literally like locked in the past. You're not thinking forwards. Some of the most skillful conversations I've noticed in the Shadow Work Library seminars are when students bring up a trauma and a dream in unison. Tabs, if you're the kind of person who's working through some known traumas, for example, there's a family issue, there's an addiction issue, there's a spiritual wound, and you also have parallel dreams in regards to this. So it's like, this is what you want for your relationships with your family. This is what you want for like how you handle consumption and moderation. This is what you want in terms of your meditative life. You can bring all of that together, and it's actually the most rewarding way of working for me personally, because we're not just having a conversation about the place that's bleeding. We're bandaging the place that's bleeding and then strengthening that part that was wounded to stronger than it was before. I really like that process. In fact, it's the reason I can't be a mainstream therapist who's doing just trauma work in one particular modality. I can't license myself or professionalize myself to be like, I am doing this particular modality that's dealing with trauma, because it's only one half of life. And in my opinion, in 3 to 5 years of focused work, and by 3 to 5 years of focused work, I mean reading for 1 hour per day, basically every day for 3 to 5 years, doing consistent self-therapy or going through a therapeutic program or multiple therapeutic programs, in 3 to 5 years of truly focused inner work, even people who've gone through horrific life experiences can become 80, 85, even 90% healed. And as a result of doing that, you then get to move on with the rest of your life. I'd rather someone take 5 years of reading for 1 hour per day, 365 hours per year. It's not that many hours. It's less than you work, it's less than you commute. 365 hours per year for 5 years in a row, 80% over the trauma threshold line, and then you get the rest of your life to dream and to live. I see the trauma work as something which is necessary, an unfortunate necessity. When we're looking at complex PTSD in the Shadow Work Library, there's an entire module on trauma in particular. There's books like Complex PTSD by Pete Walker. There's an entire module on bioenergetics and somatic therapy. There's an entire module on inner child wounds and self-criticism and self-hatred and the negative self-talk. These things are addressed, but they're addressed early on in service of the later modules, which are transpersonally oriented and about service and self-actualization and really creating something which is uniquely your own. I arguably shot myself in the foot with the Shadow Work Library being the title that it is, but I went for a clickbaity, catchy word that's trending rather than what I'm doing next year, which is more accurate, the School of Self-Integration. Because I am teaching you how to integrate yourself, which means all the way up, right to the heavens, into the clouds, the higher unconscious, keeping everything in the middle unconscious with your ego at the center, with your many primary selves inside of that ego structure. That's a bit complex to describe, but you're not just one thing, you are many sub-personalities within the ego in the center, and then the lower unconscious, which is typically the dark shadow material. I've arguably trapped myself in a linguistic bubble of shadow work, of we're not just dealing with the lower entities, we're not just dealing with the lower unconscious in the Shadow Work Library, we're doing the top as well. That's a very psychosynthesis model, and again, psychosynthesis is covered within the Shadow Work Library. Hopefully that answers your question, Tabs. I appreciate you being engaged and asking me questions about how things work. And business-wise, we also do business chats. There's been plenty of seminars where people have been starting businesses or pushing things forwards, and we've even gone down to the nuts and bolts level, like, well, what's your financial strategy? Where are you at in terms of your marketing and sales? Where are you at in terms of your emotional well-being, in terms of your emotional fortitude to get the next business venture going? I've also worked with a handful of Shadow Work Library students privately this year who want to go further and do one-to-one mentorships with me, and they've often been a mix of trauma-based work in service of a business goal. Again, you heal the wounds that unfortunately happened so you can then get stronger and be someone who's not caught up in your wounds. There's an end to the healing journey. So Tabs, if you're interested in joining the Shadow Work Library, links in the description. It's £800 on a flash sale. I'm giving you 12 books for free. We've got 111 days of time to connect, and I suppose anyone else. If you also are like Tabs and maybe considering it, send me a message on Instagram if you've got concerns. I will be honest and I will turn you away if you're not a good fit. I've done that before. If you send me a message and say, hey Jordan, I'm this kind of person with this kind of situation, I have this kind of concern, I have this kind of hope, do you think this would be right for me? If I don't think it's right for you, on my integrity, I will say, I don't think this is right for you, just go for this book, save your money, or wait until next year for the Self-Integration School. I've done that a handful of times because it's what's right. Like, I only want you to be in the space if you belong in the space. I only want you to, if I'm going to close the doors to the Shadow Work Library, I don't want to close the doors to the Shadow Work Library and you're in there for the next 3.5 months and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't even like reading fucking books. I haven't read a book in a year. You're going to be joining seminars and people are like, today I read 4 hours of books by Carl Jung, and you're like, I don't really care about reading, to be honest. I thought this was more about like life coaching and maybe my health and fitness and getting a girlfriend. I was like, it can be about that, but we also have a lot more of an academic feel. It does feel like a master's degree. Those seminars, high level language, very intelligent people who have often master's degrees or higher level education. Like, we're coming together. Adults between the ages of roughly around 30 and 50 tends to be the general demographic. It's up to you. Mixed group, men and women. About 50-50. It's actually almost 50-50. It's a rich and wholesome space. Nonetheless, that is my Shadow Work Library chat. Let's get into some questions, shall we? Because I have just pitched and yapped and talked for 20 minutes straight. Now we've got 44 people watching live, so let's go into live stream mode. I am live streaming until the candle extinguishes or until my phone battery dies, because apparently I'm on 20% battery. Any questions for me about shadow work in particular? If you put questions in the chat already, please do put them in again and I will find them, I will speak to them. Let's get into some teaching and some talking, and whatever trauma or golden shadow theme you might want to bring forwards, I will happily oblige my mind and do what I can on a live stream for you. Or you can just say hi in the chat and where you're from, and I'll read your name out and say where you're from. If you like being a little bit voyeuristic to strangers on the internet in the live stream chat, that's on you. That's your choice. the meantime, on Sunday, tomorrow, or on Monday, depending on if I find the time, because I'm doing my Shadow Work Library seminars tomorrow, 2 of them, 7 o'clock UK, midnight UK, also known as 7 o'clock New York, I will be speedrunning these books, which is a strange sentence. These books are from Module 1 of the Shadow Work Library. They typically take students at least a month to work through because it's quite a lot of books, normally more, a month to a month and a half. I'm going to try and speedrun them in about half an hour. I'm going to take the entire first module of the Shadow Work Library, all 6 of these books, and condense them into about a half an hour one-take video on YouTube to give you a taste of just, you know, you can put it on 4 times speed and just blast your brain with Carl Jung's ideas. I'm going to make a bit of fun, give myself a bit of a challenge, see if I can summarize all of this in such a short period of time, even though you are welcome to take a month and a half to work through it if you do join the library. See, Lewis Young has a good question. Do you have any advice for finding meaningful work? And can you do authentic shadow work in a meaningless job? That is a great question. Lewis, are you currently in a meaningless job? Let's make this about you. Are you currently asking this question because you're in a meaningless job and you have this part of you that's seeking deeper fulfillment, and you've got a sense of, if only I started my own business, if only I changed my career, and that's really been burning inside you for a while? Or are you already in a satisfied career and maybe you're thinking on behalf of a friend? Give me a bit of context and then I can really make it laser focused in on your particular situation. In a wider context, there is a very, very good book here. It's the book from, I think, the 1960s. Might be from the 1950s. It was first published in the collections from 1998, but 1970s. Collection of essays and extracts from the 1970s. Anyway, this is Maslow on Management, which is Abraham Maslow's book. I'll hold it up right there. I know it's flipped around on your screen, but you can screenshot this if you want to and then change it around in your photo folder. Maslow on Management is a series of essays and extracts and lectures from Abraham Maslow on the work environment and the kind of work that self-actualizing people need, including the kind of motivational strategies that they need to keep going forwards. It's a very heavily highlighted book. Let's see if the magic of the YouTube live stream is in our favor for a choice quote for Lewis's question. I think that one. Oh no, we've just got the pyramid. Classic pyramid. A reminder of Maslow's key ideas right there. Now you know who I'm talking about. There's the pyramid. Everyone knows. Let's get the actual quote. I'm going for this page. Nope, that page. Nope, this page. Nope. Oh, wow. That was apparently a very useful page. What is underlined? Meta-motivated by meta-needs. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Okay, we'll use this as a hook point. The self-actualizing individual, Lewis, you might be like this. Most, if not all, true self-actualizers, according to Maslow's criteria, identify with their work role. They are their work. Maslow says, quote, "The cause for which one works is introjected and becomes part of the self, so that the world and the self are no longer different." And then he's talking about meta-motivations as well, which is basically people who become self-actualizers in terms of self-actualizing career. They work for more than just money. They work for more than just the status of those who are around them. They work for more than social scripts. They're meta-motivated, which means they're motivated by higher values than just the survival values. They're motivated by things like fulfillment, by things like meaning, by things like deep connection or a deep feeling of artistry. Not just about money or about certain social status metrics. This idea that the self-actualizer becomes their work is very interesting if you think of someone who's a lawyer, or a doctor, or a chef, or someone who's a racing car driver, an F1 driver. They're a driver, right? They're the guy who drives the car. That's who they are. It's not that they're caught in a shallow persona. It's not that they're taking on a role in an artificial way. If they have self-actualized to the peak of their potential in a particular career, they become the role. And as a result of becoming the role, they then blur the lines between the role and the self, or the self becomes seeded within the role, and the role becomes seeded within the self. And eventually, like two gravitational force fields, there's no point even making a distinction. Case in point, Me. I am on YouTube as Jordan Thornton Inner Work. On my passport, my final third and fourth name aren't Inner Work. I am just Jordan Thornton. I obviously haven't changed my name to Jordan Thornton Inner Work. I don't introduce myself as Jordan Thornton Inner Work. But the fact that I've spent years reading for every single day, and I live this life, and I breathe this, and I don't do a lot of things that many normal people do. I really have quite a particular life of my own choosing, and I absolutely fucking love it. I would say that I'm in a self-actualizing career because I found my zone of excellence, and I don't distinguish who I am from the work that I do because the work that I do is who I am. So that's arguably, one of the major points, Lewis, that I'd bring to you. You mentioned, for context, you're 21 and you fell into a good job that's great on paper for 3 years, but your soul craves so much more. I can feel my soul numbing down to the work. Where would you start? Well, depending on what your hours are, Lewis, I've worked with clients before and I've seen them go from full-time to part-time. That usually is the best. The most practical thing to do, if you're 21, you've got a good position that pays money, reduce your hours to the point where you can have 1 full day per week to yourself that isn't the weekend. Try and get a 4-day per week. If you can have 4 days per week, you get 1 full day to do whatever you want with, and that could be a new business, that could be some kind of healing project, that could be a creative project, and then you still get the weekends. Realistically, if you're very motivated to make something of yourself, because you're 21, you've got all of that fire in your belly, you can do 4 days per week at the main job, negotiate it, do something, find a way to do 40 hours in 4 days, do 10 hours per day. You can do it. You can do it. You could do 12 hours per day for a small period of time, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even up to a year, and then use those 3 days per week to really explore. Maybe it's a deep period of learning, maybe it's a deep period of experimentation, but try and split your week in half. It really works. I've seen it work for many different people in different professions where they don't need to give up their main job, they just claim back a day from the week. Hopefully that helps. You've probably got a sense that you need to move on. It's not the right role for you. But don't jump too soon. That would be potentially a financially foolish thing to do. So just make a good plan and know that your soul is probably craving something quite valuable. In which case, don't ignore the whisper and don't let it become a shout. Otherwise the shout will be quite painful. See some good questions coming in. Just going to hydrate myself. Looking at the chat now. From Elaine. At what stage of individuation one focuses more on anima or animus work versus general shadow integration? And what was my path, if I'm willing to share? Very good. Very, very good. So, general shadow integration. So by general shadow integration, you mean the integration of either shadow entities, shadow territories, or shadow behaviors, which is my conceptualization of what shadow is. So I broke the concept of shadow down. I didn't read this in a book. This is a synthesis of everything that I've read on the shadow from Carl Jung himself and other men and women who are incredible thinkers. I broke it down to basically 3 major categories that people relate to. You have a shadow behavior, which is something that is seemingly outside of your character. You have a certain vice, a certain addiction, a certain tantrum moment, a certain emotional shutdown. You have a shadow behavior, something that you do and you don't know where it comes from. It's in the shadows. Why does that take over me? The shadow entity is the one who does the shadow behavior. For many people, the shadow entity is usually a disowned self, so it's not truly in shadow. This is where you need to get a bit more technical. If you have the higher unconscious, the middle unconscious, and the lower unconscious, and the ego sits in the middle, everything in the realm of the middle unconscious is somewhere between subconscious and truly unconscious. Subconscious, it's within range and within reach of ego consciousness, but unconscious, it starts to be out of regular bands of awareness. For something to be truly unconscious, that's what it then becomes shadow. So for the sake of simplicity, a shadow entity is something that you are truly surprised by when you go into active imagination and you're like, wow, I didn't realize that I had this brutal, marauding warrior inside of me. I didn't realize that I had this lying, cheating, like feminine destructive force inside of me. I didn't believe that I could possibly have, again, golden shadow aspects, this incredibly wise sage-like old man or old woman inside of me. Those are shadow entities. Shadow entities express shadow behaviors. So in this context, you say I worked with the Death Mother shadow complex. Okay, so I'll use the Death Mother as an example. The Death Mother archetype may have the particular shadow behavior of reputation destruction for self or other, because there's a destructive drive, which is something like, I can't say the words, but the unaliving, as it were, the unaliving impulse, the implosion within needs to go somewhere non-literal. In this case, it could be a reputation destruction. That could be bad-mouthing and gossiping or really attacking someone else, or it could be attacking yourself in terms of a negative self-talk and like very strong inner critic attack that's linked to the Death Mother as the entity. The final territory is literally the territory. So where does the Death Mother live? That would be a question that I'd ask you in terms of, classic shadow work library, week 1 inside the shadow work library. We'll be doing our shadow entities, shadow territories, and shadow behaviors. The shadow behavior of reputation destruction and negative self-talk or negative talk of others is expressed by the shadow, the particular shadow entity of the Death Mother. The Death Mother, where does she live? Imagine, like, where does she live? What's the territory? Well, it could be several things. Territory can mean a literal place, like it could mean the school, or it could mean the office, or it could mean the gym. It's like a territory, literal territory, but territories can also be conceptual territories. So conceptual territory is something like femininity, or mothering, or parenting. That's kind of more towards what the Death Mother represents. The Death Mother probably is in the shadow territory of parenting, and it might also have another territory related to something either creative or something, it depends on the individual, but that's the basic concept. You say, when do you then move from shadow integration overall to anima and animus work in particular? Anima and Animus work is module 7 of the Shadow Work Library, and I've dubbed it the Sexual Shadow. I share a variety of books. I believe there's 4, maybe 5 books in that module, where we're looking at the particular masculine and feminine energies that have been disowned in any particular man or woman, and from a Jungian perspective, we would then have the Anima and the Animus being the labels that we associated them. Typically, people approach the Anima and Animus issue when either they're very motivated by higher meditative or higher state kind of work, so they're in deep visionary states, and then they see visions of what they would describe as the eternal feminine or the eternal masculine. They could then label that as the Anima or the Animus, and then it's a way of you almost some people would say, based on the theory, like completing your soul. It's a vision of your soul. Some people would even then conflate it to say it is your soul. I believe at various times Jung even said that the anima is the soul, coming again from the Greek etymology initially. But more practically, what I found from my shadow work library students over the last 8 months, most people approach anima and animus work, the inner masculine or inner feminine, from a romantic context. They are working with romantic projections, they're working with failed marriages and failed relationships, they're understanding why they fall in love too quickly, why they become limerent, or why they get hooked on fantasies, what is the image of the dream man or the dream woman that they're chasing. And if we can go with what is a very common frustration for most people, why am I like this? Why do I fall madly in love? Why do I quickly fall out of love? Why do I get into these bad relationships? Let's look at the projections. How does the projection launch? Which hook does it land on? If you can see what hooks are being landed, you've then got a hint towards your anima or your animus. So it's working with a particular shadow behavior and a shadow pattern, but it's not making it too mystical or too otherworldly or too Jungian in the explicit sense. It's actually looking at the basic kind of intersexual projection dynamics, which will be replicated and repeated in literal relationships for most people who have their own natural ups and downs in their love life. You can then take it to the next level by adding in the archetypal theory, adding in the various psychological complexes, and trying to then bring in a bit more of a philosophical take rather than just a practical take. I see you in the chat, Elaine. You're saying, I'm trying to integrate logos and sovereignty in me through the animas rather than collapsing into the external masculine. Okay, so you're trying to integrate the particular shadow behaviors of sovereignty. So wisdom, sovereignty, genuine masculine values in terms of what many would say is like the wise old man. Like wise old man or the strong king, that's more archetypal energy. I suppose basically what you can do is if this is something practical. I'll finish on this. If you're working with your animus in particular, which is the image of the masculine, I would focus on reading a book like King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, in which case you get to break that into 4 major masculine archetypes, and you can work with the light and shadow sides of each of those masculine archetypes to then see how something like sovereignty would express through the lens of the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. The lover's sovereignty is very different from the warrior's sovereignty. Just think about that. What does it mean to be a sovereign lover? It means to be engaged in the poetry and beauty of life within and in the world that you occupy. It means to dance through the world. It means to create a loving relationship and a deeply sensual connection with all things that you encounter. To be the eye of the beholder and the one who's being beholden, if that's a word. To be sovereign in the warrior is to stand in power, to stand for something greater than yourself, to be willing to die for a cause. That is still to be sovereign as a warrior. Very, very different things right there as I'm holding up the rock hands. Very different between the lover and the warrior, and the king and the magician between. All of this could be within the realm of the animus. Again, same way for the anima. You might have the maiden, the mother, the crone, the priestess, the huntress, the lover, and the queen. All 7 of them right there. Many different faces of the anima. The archetypal lens is probably well worth going into. And again, in the second module of the Shadow Work Library, we're all about archetypes. So if you are interested in potentially getting involved in the structured way lane, I would love to have you inside of there. Otherwise, take King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, read it at your own pace, and good luck with the integration. Jen, good to see you here. You said, yes, the hum of limerence. Good to see you, Jordan. Hope you're well. Good to see you, Jen. Hope you've been well this year. I see Fried Rice, wishing everyone is safe. Very compassionate rice. Didn't know carbs could be so caring, but now I do know. Elaine says, thank you so much, Jordan. It was very helpful. Glad to be helpful. I'm on 10% battery. The candle is diminishing. I think the battery is going to die before the candle, which is quite fun because the electronics aren't as strong as the old school tech, but that's okay. The reason I can't charge the phone is because I've got the microphone plugged in, so it is what it is. Wisdom Wanderer says, I'm at a point where I understand my shadow behaviours. Also, welcome to everyone watching live. If you've joined live recently, welcome. I'm at a point where I understand my shadow behaviours, but how do I work on stopping certain psychological impulses that may arise in different situations that cause shadow behaviours or persona? You need to center yourself in your spiritual will. And by that, I mean you need to center your decision-making faculty and your sense of autonomy in your soul or in your higher self rather than in the day-to-day ego concerns. And what that means practically is you need to have a very strong value system that you don't bend or break. Because when a complex tries to take over, when, let's say, let's go with the shadow entity of a rebellious inner child. You've got an 8-year-old rebellious inner child inside of you. You have a certain routine around your diet. You won't overconsume a certain type of food. Let's imagine that you're banning all kinds of processed foods, so none of the plastic crap that's brightly coloured. You're banning that. That's a good literal discipline to have. You've got a discipline, and you are trying to practice a discipline of no processed junk food. But unless you have a devotion that is above the discipline, you are likely to crack when a certain complex or strong shadow force, in this case a rebellious inner child, says, hey, I want to do what I want to do, and guess what, it's 2 a.m. and you're raiding the snack drawer. You shouldn't have even had snacks in there, but you knew that you put one all the way at the back behind the healthy things, and you left the chocolate bar in there. That was arguably not you and your higher self acting there. The way to anchor it is to take the discipline towards devotion. Devotion is the center. It's a level up. Devotion is the center, and the discipline is that which serves the devotion. To be devoted to something like a loving and deeply respecting relationship to your health from the inside out. I'm devoted to treating my body like a sovereign place. I'm devoted. I will not put poison in my body. I haven't drank or taken drugs personally for 6.5 years. I haven't done that. I haven't touched anything in 6.5 years. I refuse that. The discipline of not drinking or not smoking or not taking drugs when offered is inferior to the deeper devotion of I'm interested in what happens to my consciousness if I stay sober and really use all the intelligence and sensitivity that I have to really build this naturally and not desecrate my mind and desecrate my body with poisonous substances. That's a devotional energy. You can see me kind of like, this is me. The not drinking, not doing drugs is secondary. That's a discipline. So if a complex might come in, maybe I'm at a party, don't go to too many parties realistically where there's lots of drugs going around. I have a different crowd of people I'm kind of interested in, mainly the Shadow Work Library students and a few close friends. But practically, if I were in an environment where I'd have to exercise discipline to not do something, I'm arguably already cracking on my devotion. To be truly devoted to a small number of values, that is what creates long-term success in things like sobriety or long-term success in things like a business endeavor. As I mentioned at the very start of the live stream, for people who hear at the start of the live stream, I set one New Year's resolution to do what needs to be done for the greatest good and the highest need of myself and those I care about. Wisdom Wanderer said, where do I find devotion? Probably not in a live stream chat here on YouTube. Probably in prayer and meditation. You probably need to reflect in prayer half an hour per day for the next 90 days in a row. If you're doing that already, make it 1 hour. If you're doing that already, read more very high quality books and texts. If you're currently spending too much time on the phone, turn the phone off. I've personally found great benefit in doing extended multi-day fasts. I did something between 25 to 30, so 25 to 30 different fasts between 2 to 5 days, no food, sometimes no water. I did that for a few years. If you're meditating and praying in a fasted state, you will find your devotion. You're very likely to feel the presence of something greater inside of yourself. You're very likely to strengthen your spiritual resolve, but it requires effort. And you have to walk in a bit of blind faith. Here I am as a man on YouTube saying you should meditate for an hour a day and pray for an hour a day and not eat food for 3 days in a row. Do it safely. Don't rush into these kinds of things. Try 1 day fast and see how your body reacts to it. I'm not a doctor and this isn't medical advice. Just consider the energy of what I'm trying to share, which is making a devotional container where you can truly hear what's already inside of you. I wish you luck. But you know what you need to do. It's just looking inwards, which means not this. Everyone, in addition to Wisdom Wanderer, I mean, you have the name, you're called Wisdom Wanderer. Maybe you should stop wandering. Maybe you should just sit in one place and see what you notice. That might be the next step. Bit of a cheeky comment, but also might be true. We'll take a few more questions before my battery dies. See some people showing up in the chat. Scrolling up to see if I missed a few questions from earlier on. Okay. Yeah, so Wisdom Wanderer saying, hey, thanks Jordan Connor. Abstract Existence Project saying, never felt more humble than fasting. And Krista Johnsrud is here with a question. Fantastic. I will answer your question. Welcome to everyone joining live. Thoughts on feeling or integrating knowledge and not just intellectualizing it. I notice visual metaphors like memes are able to break through, but reading, even though educational, can't break through. So what are my thoughts on integrating the knowledge and not just intellectualizing it? So do you mean, how do you actually learn things? How do you take a book? So how do I take Meet in the Shadow, and I take a concept. I take this chapter on the devil in tarot. I don't personally practice tarot, but how do I not just have an intellectual idea of what that means? Well, it means to practice. It means to practice tarot as a daily practice. We have another section here called The Enemy Maker, and this is from Sam Keen. Sam Keen wrote Faces of the Enemy, which is also in the Shadow Work Library. That's a fantastic book from the 1980s, might be early 1990s, about projection dynamics and the hate bonds that form between individuals and even nations. Sam Keen worked behind the scenes in the Cold War peace talks. He's a Jungian psychologist who lived a very interesting life. He's got an essay here about enemy making. His general concept about enemy making is that hate bonds form adversarial symbioses, and adversarial symbiosis is a state of artificially propping yourself up based on a weak sense of self, which is artificially reinforced by you putting yourself in a greater than or superior position to someone who you artificially demean or put into an inferior position. That's intellectualization, right? The intellectualization, to take an example of what it means to have a hate bond and an adversarial symbiosis from Sam Keen, is, okay, such a thing exists as a hate bond. Such a thing exists as adversarial symbiosis, which is two false selves locking themselves together and creating this false self tango where everyone gets to throw projections and feed off this kind of low grade, kind of charge, but still very low grade energy. How I would then integrate that is I would then ask myself the question of, in what ways do I have active hate bonds? What am I still hating? Where are my adversarial symbioses? In the past, maybe I'd have resentments towards former friends who did me dirty, or a girlfriend who I broke up with, or maybe an employment situation where something was handled unfairly. I might, in my mind, have memories of something that happened 10 years ago that I still feel resentment around. And if I notice that in myself, I'm like, I've still got a hate bond to that particular memory. What can I do to work through that? And I'll probably go through a forgiveness process. I might go through a somatic process first, which is a somatic unblocking. Maybe I need to go and punch the bag for a while. Maybe I need to go for a big run. Maybe I need to just proper somatic therapy. And then maybe I go through a forgiveness process. Maybe I don't rush towards forgiveness. The way that I teach forgiveness, you need to understand before you can accept, and before you can forgive, acceptance is that middle point. Understanding, acceptance, forgiveness. Don't aim for forgiveness, aim for acceptance. A hate bond, an adversarial symbiosis, is something that you can't accept. I can't accept that this person did this to me. I can't accept this person has a different worldview. I can't accept that these people have different political opinions. Therefore, adversarial symbiosis with a different political group. See what I'm doing here? So what I'm trying to do is I took a random idea from a book that I've read, I don't know, 5 times I've read this book. I then found an extract from Sam Keen. I've read 4 of Sam Keen's books, so I've intellectualized a lot of his ideas, but then I would apply it into my own life and have applied it into my own life. And I've taught it in the Shadow Work Library. There are lessons and exercises. There's literally exercises in there on the hate bonds and adversarial symbiosis. I make it personal. So the simple shorthand summary is take the intellectual idea out there and then really ask myself the question of, how does this apply to me? In what way am I exactly the thing that I'm reading about? Even if it seems like you're definitely not. In what way am I like that? That's when it becomes yours and you claim it. Hopefully that helps and answers the question. It's very much a repeatable process because it doesn't really matter what the idea is. You can just apply that way of digesting and integrating the information. We have, I think, the final question, because we're at 52 minutes now. The candle is going down, almost at the tipping point, and we are on probably about 4% battery. Alejandro says, why are you getting rid of your shadow work course? I'm not getting rid of it. I'm closing the doors so that we can have the best possible, most intimate, intense conversations for the next 111 days. It's a group course. And imagine what it's like if in November we've got 4 new students who are joining, who are reading Meeting the Shadow, right? Imagine you've been in the course for 3 months or 6 months, or all my students who joined back in January, and you're at the moment where you really know everyone. You've got friends. People have made friendships. People are having calls with each other all the time. I hear from people in messages, I just had a call with so-and-so and it was 4 hours long, or I had a call with so-and-so and it was 6 hours long. I'm like, wow, these people are really forming lifelong friendships in here. I want you to be having deep and interesting conversations with me and people who become your friends without like new people coming in. God bless their hearts. I'm not against new people joining. I just want everyone to join kind of now. I'll phrase it this way. It typically takes, think of this, don't think it's not just sales here. How long does it take for you to feel comfortable in a new group? Think of being at school, maybe a new school class, right? You join a university program, and how many weeks until you kind of recognize all the faces and know a few of the names and have heard some of the stories, and then you start sharing more and more. If you're more extroverted, maybe day 1, hour 1, I've had people that join and they just, they're happy to speak for half an hour and seminar right away. Most people need about 3 to 5 weeks to get comfortable with a group to start talking about things like trauma and their deepest dreams and ambitions, especially if there's embarrassing things or shameful things in there. What I want to happen is if people join now, because the Shadow Work Library closes on September the 21st, you then still have 100 days to then acclimatize yourself, really embed yourself, and then by November time, December time, you've got friends in the Shadow Work Library rather than strangers in a circle live meeting Sunday seminar. You go through that first 4 or 5 week acclimatization period, you read your first 6 books, and then you get a really meaty 2-month period of coaching and intensity, and you can form friendships that go way beyond the Shadow Work Library. That's why I'm closing it. I'm closing it because you need to have barriers of containment to create a transformational experience. I want my current students to have the best experience that they can for the next 111 days. I want new students to kind of all get in right now and get as involved as they possibly can. And I've taken a bit of money off the price to give you 12 books for free as the equivalent. Link in the description. £800 to the Shadow Work Library. You've got 9 days left to make your decision, and then it will be gone forever. It's still running. I'll still be there in the calls. You still get the lifetime access course, but you won't be able to buy it anymore. It's like, it's done. It's done. Next year's Self-Integration School, public launch on April 10th. I'll be filming like a madman in between. I've been documenting that over on Instagram. You should actually check out my Instagram. I've been sharing every single day on Instagram for the last 59 days. Check this out. I used to have my offline days, remember? And now we're on day 59. This is inverted, so it looks a bit weird. But almost 60 days of showing up every single day and trying to teach and set the example. And also working out every single day and going for a weighted walk every single day. Just really focusing on embodiment and, I suppose, intellectualization and showing up in digital persona in a good way. The candle is diminished. We're at almost the 1 hour mark on the live stream, and I know that I'm on probably about 2% battery, so I don't want things to cut out all of a sudden, but hopefully this has answered your question, Alejandro, of why I'm closing the Shadow Work Library. Just a few more people saying, this time is ours. Hello again, Jordan, sending so much love, as always, from the mountains of Vermont. Good to see you here. And we've got some conversation going on wonderfully between Connor and Wisdom. I love to see it. I love to see the conversation. It's great for me in the live streams of seeing how people chat, also in the Shadow Work Library seminars. Imagine like a Zoom call. There's 15, 20 people. In the chat on the side, I have gotten the feedback from multiple students. It is the most active chat they've ever seen in a group environment. I'm very lucky. It's my first group environment I've ever hosted. You've got the chat kind of going off and people sharing links and comments and thoughtful things while other people are discussing, because people are really, this is like really engaged. Cameras on community. I never record the calls. It's fully private and fully confidential. Like, that's rare. You get that feeling there's a difference. It's not like, oh, I'm going to share something and then in a week's time someone who wasn't at the seminar can hear me share about the thing that I'm embarrassed about. No, you get to make the choice based on who's there in the call. The doors close within the first 10 minutes, and no one's joining half an hour in, and it's never recorded. I've made something different in the Shadow Work Library. I've made a very high quality group coaching and therapeutic experience and a very high quality master's level academic experience, and I've combined the two together. So this is your last chance. Jamie says, final question. Hey Jordan, just tuning in. With the Self-Integration School releasing next year, what are the main differences to Shadow Work Library? The Self-Integration School is 3 times as large. It is a 104 book curriculum with 30 modules. The Shadow Work Library is 36 books over 9 modules. The Shadow Work Library is 1 90-minute seminar per week on a Sunday. The Self-Integration School is 2 2-hour seminars every single week. As you might expect, it costs over 3 times as much to get into the Self-Integration School. It's £800 to join the Shadow Work Library now. It will be £3,300 to join the Self-Integration School, because I will have created the largest, most comprehensive holistic psychology curriculum ever recorded on the internet. We're going to have over 400 videos in there, 104 book curriculum. Universities don't do this. My camera is going dark, which means the screen is going off, so I need to end the live stream because it's going to end at any moment now, but 9 days left on the Shadow Work Library. You got a few days to decide. I would love to see you inside. Let me do my best work. Now is the time. Don't waste the next 111 days. If you need a bit of support, lean on me for support. If you need some structure, I've got the structure for you. I'll see you in the link in the description, and I'll also see you in the next video in a couple of days' time, where we're going to be speed running the curriculum. Just in case you don't want to join, I'm going to speed run it anyway. Goodbye, my friend. I will see you in a few days.